Breaking tonight, reaction to the bombshell findings of Robert Mueller.
It was a complete and total exoneration.
After 22 months and hundreds of witnesses, the special counsel says the Trump campaign did not conspire with Russia to sway the 2016 election.
No collusion, no obstruction.
No obstruction? Well, that's less clear. We'll break down the law, the politics, and what it all means for Donald Trump.
Trying to get aid to thousands desperate for help. CBC News is in the air and on the ground in Mozambique.
There was a significant level of violence involved in this kidnapping. We just need to find him right now.
And a Toronto student grabbed, tased, and driven away. Police appeal for help in a brazen kidnapping. This is The National. For 22 months, the mantra has been as predictable and consistent as anything else in Donald Trump's presidency. No collusion, no obstruction. And it's a finding essentially echoed by the Office of Special Counsel Robert Mueller in his final report. Now, according to this very letter from the U.S. Attorney General to Congress, after 19 lawyers backed by 40 FBI agents issued 2,800 subpoenas, executed nearly 500 search warrants, and interviewed about 500 witnesses, Mueller did not establish that members of the Trump campaign conspired or coordinated with the Russian government in its scheme to get Trump elected. On obstruction of justice, though, the score is murkier. Mueller himself weighed the evidence without drawing conclusions. In Mueller's words, his report does not conclude the president committed a crime. It also does not exonerate him. But as Paul Hunter tells us, you can guess how the U.S. president sums it all up.
For almost the whole time he's been in office, Donald Trump had waited for this. Today, stepping toward the cameras, no doubt relishing the moment to say, finally.
It was just announced there was no collusion with Russia, the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. There was no collusion with Russia. There was no obstruction, and none whatsoever. And it was a complete and total exoneration.
And while that's not entirely true, parts of it are. As Special Counsel Robert Mueller, who'd spent 22 months investigating Donald Trump while steering clear of cameras, today chose to go to church, then walk past the White House. He was doing so just as Attorney General Bill Barr was at the U.S. Justice Department putting the finishing touches on a summary of Mueller's findings. It's the summary released today that Trump was talking about on that tarmac. Key point, as Trump has said so often, no one in the Trump campaign was found to have colluded with Russia as Russia tried to influence the 2016 election. That's a huge win for Trump. But Mueller's findings on the other matter, on whether Trump obstructed justice trying to impede that investigation, the findings are ambivalent. It's not established that Trump committed any crime, says the summary, but Mueller's report does not exonerate him. And nowhere in Barr's summary does it say there is no evidence of any wrongdoing.
President Trump is wrong. This report does not amount to a so-called total exoneration.
Democrat Jerry Nadler, who would lead impeachment proceedings if it ever came to that, now says he wants the Attorney General to testify on Capitol Hill. Plus,
the entire unfiltered report, as well as the evidence underlying that report, must be made available to Congress and to the American people.
Still, back home in Washington tonight, Trump was in a pretty good mood.
I just want to tell you that America is the greatest place on earth. The greatest place on earth. Thank you very much.
And for now, he left it at that. Paul Hunter, CBC News, Washington.
Now, this is the White House right now. Trump inside after a weekend in Florida. As news of the arrival of Mueller's report roiled Washington, Trump was golfing. Now he'll be playing a very different game as the political implications sink in and as Congress pushes to get more information about Mueller's report. And the man who will be at the center of that fight the same man in the news today, U.S. Attorney General William Barr. He decides how much more of Mueller's investigation is made public, but also where the investigation itself goes next. So let's bring in Keith Bogue in Washington. So Keith, explain that for us. The void left open by the fact that Mueller drew no conclusion on whether Trump obstructed justice.
I think, first of all, you have to remember how William Barr became the Attorney General. He became the Attorney General because of the vacancy created after the midterm elections last fall in November when Donald Trump fired Jeff Sessions. And he fired Jeff Sessions because he wanted an Attorney General who hadn't recused himself from the Russia investigation. He wanted an Attorney General who could get involved in it directly, and today we are seeing the fruits of that change in Attorney Generals. You have in William Barr somebody who gets a report from Robert Mueller saying, look, there's evidence to support that the president obstructed justice, and there's evidence on the other side. I can't make a determination. Barr makes the determination himself and says, look, I've decided we're not going to prosecute on that there was no obstruction of justice. And that is exactly the kind of thing that Donald Trump had to have hoped he would get with an Attorney General who could get himself involved in the investigation. But at the same time, it has created a sense of distrust, bad faith on the part of Democrats who believe that the fix was in, that William Barr had already prejudged the obstruction question months ago, in fact, in an essay he wrote before he even became the Attorney General. And so they're going to be facing off against each other. The Attorney General of the United States, appointed by Donald Trump, and the Democrats with their newfound power won in the election last November. And that's where the next friction point is going to be in all of this.
Right. And so, Keith, what are the kinds of questions that this letter issued by Barr that it doesn't answer on the Russia-Trump campaign relationship?
Well, I mean, for a start, the question that it answers is the big question about collusion, but it's maybe not even the most important question. It doesn't tell us, like, what's behind the fundamental facts that so many of the people in the Trump organization and the Trump campaign organization lied about the relationship with Russia. That includes the president, his son, his former national security advisor, his campaign manager, and others. Why did they lie about it? Typically, it's because they had something to hide. What was it that they had to hide? These are all questions about the Russia relationship with the Trump campaign that aren't answered simply by saying there was no collusion. And these are the questions that Democrats are going to want to hear from. And they may, in fact, be questions that Mueller has answered in his report, but we just don't know it yet from the letter that was released by the Attorney General today.
Keith Bogue in Washington, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Now, the special counsel's investigation led to dozens of charges and guilty pleas, many of them close to Trump himself. Trump's former campaign chair and deputy campaign chair were indicted for tax fraud, bank fraud, and a money laundering scheme that spanned decades. His former personal lawyer convicted for tax fraud, bank fraud, and lying to Congress. His former national security advisor admitted to lying to the FBI and acting as an unregistered foreign agent for Turkey. And a friend and advisor was indicted for lying to Congress about his contacts with WikiLeaks. But the Mueller probe also offloaded potential cases to other offices. And at this point, we don't know how many investigations are still out there digging into Trump's conduct.
We're going to go into his finances. We're going to check his deals. We're going to check. These people are sick.
Prosecutors are definitely busy.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
Looking into Trump's inaugural committee, which raised and spent at least twice as much as those for previous presidents. There are also civil inquiries into alleged misconduct at Trump's charity, which has now been shut down, and into the Trump organization's business practices. But much of Trump's publicly known legal exposure comes from his former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen.
Everybody's job at the Trump organization is to protect Mr. Trump. Every day, most of us knew we were coming in and we were going to lie for him.
Trump called Cohen a rat for cooperating with law enforcement. Mueller spent months investigating him, but New York prosecutors indicted him, in part for arranging payments to hush up Trump's alleged affairs during the election campaign. That would be a campaign finance violation. And Trump, known in Cohen's indictment as Individual One, allegedly directed that crime.
Donald Trump wrote you a check out of his personal account while he was serving as president of the United States to reimburse you for hush money payments.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
And during congressional testimony last month, Cohen was talkative until asked about his final communications with Trump.
Unfortunately, this topic is actually something that's being investigated right now by the Southern District of New York, and I've been asked by them not to discuss and not to talk about these issues.
It's a reminder that for the U.S. president, Mueller was just the beginning.
Criminal conspiracy of financial fraud.
So Trump has many legal challenges ahead, but he's certainly celebrating a win today. So what does it all mean for the president's legacy? Joining me now, presidential historian Tim Naftali. He's a professor at New York University and the former director of the Richard Nixon Presidential Library and Museum, joining us from Austin, Texas tonight. So Tim, in terms of the big picture, what about the findings strike you?
This is a big deal for President Trump. Imagine if in the Watergate period, the Watergate special prosecutor had found that there was no collusion, no connection between the Watergate burglars and Nixon's re-election committee. That's, in a sense, what Mueller found with regard to collusion with Russia.
And so in terms of the consequences, though, of this, I mean, what are we to make of what it means for Donald Trump, big picture?
Well, one of the first things it means for the United States is that the system is working in the sense that Mueller was able to do his work, and we, of course, need to see or hope to see the way in which he proceeded and the kinds of information he looked at. Well, the president could have made the statement that the system is working, but he has indicated to us what it's going to be like in this country for the next at least year and a half. The president's statement as he was leaving West Palm Beach today was that a failed takedown, or the president's statement was that an illegal takedown had failed. He was indicating that he's going to go out on the offensive. Rather than saying, hey, my campaign has just been exonerated, I want to go after the Democrats. So I think this foreshadows an even meaner, tougher political moment in the United States, and that's a shame.
Next election will be interesting, that's for sure. Presidential historian Tim Naftali joining us from Austin. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And we'll talk more about that upcoming election with our U.S. political panel, along with how all of this will play out in the year ahead, Ian.
But Andrew, first let's turn to the growing humanitarian disaster in Africa. 10 days after Cyclone Idai tore through southeastern Africa, causing devastating floods and destruction, the confirmed death toll is staggering, more than 760 people. And as rescue turns to the recovery of bodies in Malawi, Zimbabwe, and Mozambique, the urgent concerns now are hunger, dehydration, and disease.
We'll have cholera, we'll have malaria. It's unavoidable in this situation. The priority is to give assistance in form of food, health, and shelter at this moment.
In Mozambique alone, the UN says more than 1.8 million people are in need. And at this airport today, food and supplies were streaming in steadily from around the world. But as the CBC's Nala Ayed tells us, getting that aid to the people who need it most has its own challenges.
In the unbearable heat, it is a heavy lift. But in the business of saving lives, this is the easier part. Still, to get just 2 metric tons of food moving, you need dozens of hands. Simple ingredients: rice, tinned tomatoes, biscuits, and oil. But when half the country is affected, it is a complicated mission.
We're not past the danger zone, you know. We don't want to have saved people to just delay the problem and having a big loss of life later on. So it's still very urgent.
10 days since a cyclone swept through here like a giant eraser. From up here, you can see the inland sea and the tree cemetery that goes on for kilometers. And in the breadbasket of Mozambique, it left countless hungry and isolated. That's where the helicopters come in.
We're told that this helicopter was actually diverted from South Sudan, and that gives you a sense of the urgency. The World Food Program is actually putting this emergency on par with Syria, Yemen, and South Sudan. And that makes it one of their top priorities.
And so they stir excitement wherever they're able to land. The more isolated, the more welcome. And inevitably, the more crowd control necessary. And so this human chain picks up where the other left off, no less weight on their shoulders. But the food is actually meant for another, more desperate village isolated by the floods, more than 100 kilometers away. This had just been the first leg on the way. Follow the flooding river and you can see the challenge that desert of water presents. The Kaya area was flooded even before the cyclone arrived. There's water in the fields, in the house, and also in the shops, says Luisa Alberto. Muhammad Ignacio is a policeman here.
Did people die?
Some people die. The place is broken.
The WFP helicopter has one more urgent run before the day is out. They just heard 1,200 farm workers are stranded by a giant new lake. It's a quick drop of the basics, tents and food. The first outside help these survivors have had in 10 days. One moment, countless hours and thousands of dollars in the making. And a country that's desperate for more of them. Nala Ayed, CBC News in central Mozambique.
This weekend, Global Affairs Canada announced up to $3.5 million in emergency assistance to support those aid groups responding to Cyclone Idai, as well as donating relief supplies, including shelter kits, tarps, mosquito nets, and blankets.
Turning now to a shocking kidnapping situation in the city of Markham, north of Toronto. A young man seized and thrown into a black van beneath a condo building early last night, and we don't know why. It all happened so quickly. Police have little to work with so far and need help. Our Magda Gabrasalase shares what we do know tonight.
A brazen attack captured on camera. York Regional Police say Wan Jan Liu, a student studying in Toronto, was a victim of a kidnapping by men armed with a taser.
It was a violent altercation, and we just need to find him right now.
According to police, he goes by the name Peter, and he's now been missing for more than 24 hours. Police say the 22-year-old Chinese national returned to this building where he lives shortly before 6 p.m. last night. He was with a female friend. After parking the vehicle, they were walking in the underground area when police say a dark-colored van pulled up.
3 men got out of that van. One of them was armed with a conductive energy weapon. The victim resisted as they tried to get him into the van. I can tell you that he was shocked with that conductive energy weapon, dragged into the van, and the van fled this area.
The friend was not injured. These are the images of 3 of the suspects, their faces partially concealed. Police say a 4th suspect was driving the black Dodge Caravan that was clearly marked as wheelchair accessible. You can also see some stickers. The motive is still being investigated.
I really do hope that the gentleman does get found. It's really unfortunate.
People who live in the building have questions about how and why this happened, including this man, who says he often sees vehicles find a way into the secured underground garage.
So cars will press their button to get inside to the underground parking, and then a car will be waiting on the side and they'll just sneak in.
As for the victim, this image shows what he was wearing. We've been told the Chinese consulate in Toronto has been in contact with police and have since reached out to Liu's family. Magda Gabrasalase, CBC News, Toronto.
Here's a look at some other stories we're watching tonight, starting with the deaths of a Quebec couple found killed in Florida.
A couple of break-ins here and there, bike thefts, but never a murder.
The bodies of Marc Gagne and Rita Fortin, elderly Quebec couple, were found Friday in their home north of Fort Lauderdale. It's believed the pair wintered there for decades. Police aren't saying if there are any suspects. A drama that's been unfolding off the coast of Norway is finally over. More than a day after engine failure and wild weather forced it to issue a mayday call, the Viking Sky cruise ship made it to port today. Nearly 1,400 people, including at least 15 Canadians, were on board when the ship broke down, sent rollings by waves that were whipped up for hours by a storm in an area notorious for rough waters. There were injuries, at least 20 people, including a Canadian, and there was fear. It was dangerous and unrelenting.
Furniture would slide across the room, slide back, and with it came people and glass.
Tossed by waves more than 8 meters high, hobbled by engine problems, and drifting towards a rocky shore, the crew of the Viking Sky put out a call for help. On board, passengers strapped on life vests and tried to hold on.
And all of a sudden, the seawater just 6-7 feet high come rushing in. My wife was sitting in front of me, and all of a sudden she was gone. And I thought this was it.
The injured were airlifted into rescue helicopters, fighting powerful winds to pluck nearly 500 people from the ship.
And I just saw a rope coming out of it, and I said, I got to go up there. They said, yes, you do.
The guy came down from the helicopter, one of the Coast Guards, snapped my belt and said, hold it, and shot me up about 100 feet in the air.
With nearly 900 more people still on board, a break. The crew got 3 of the ship's 4 engines working, and tugboats were able to take it to a nearby port.
So we just chalk this up to an unexpected adventure.
I was scared.
The ship's next voyage has been canceled pending an investigation. Still ahead on The National, what is it about a music video that's turned officials in Iceland into non-believers? We'll explain.
But first, back to our top story. U.S. lawmakers get the main findings of the Mueller report. Now, the fight for more details. And as always, more drama. Our special U.S. political panel up next. For almost as long as he's been president, Donald Trump has been under investigation into allegations of whether he or his campaign conspired with Russia to sway the results of the 2016 election. But to be clear, these are allegations he's always denied. And tonight, with a summary of the Mueller report now in the hands of Congress, Trump is declaring victory.
It was just announced there was no collusion with Russia, the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. There was no collusion with Russia. There was no obstruction, and none whatsoever. And it was a complete and total exoneration. And it began illegally. And hopefully somebody's going to look at the other side. This was an illegal takedown that failed.
But has the president been completely exonerated? What does this mean for his administration going forward? And what will Democrats do next? Our American political panel is here to explore these very questions and where it all goes next. So we've got our CBC Washington correspondent Keith Bogue, Elena Beverly, a former Obama White House official, also in Washington, and in Sacramento, California, we have Republican strategist and crisis management consultant Kevin Eckery. Thanks to all of you for joining us. Kevin, maybe I'll start with you because we heard from Republicans that they look at this as being a total and complete exoneration of Donald Trump. So let's start there. I mean, to what extent is the cloud hanging over Donald Trump gone?
Well, first of all, this is not a complete exoneration of Donald Trump. But it is a good day for him because for people who have been focusing on the Russia investigation, having the special counsel say that there was no collusion is a good thing. When you read the letter, however, it's a masterstroke of clever writing because it's very narrowly drafted and it doesn't say anything about what's happening in the Southern District of New York, where, frankly, the more dangerous charges to the Trump administration are, and to Trump himself.
And Elena, on the collusion front, I mean, you have to be very particular about the wording, right? Because it's clear that Mueller has gone through great pains to choose his words carefully. Is saying that they weren't able to establish collusion the same as saying there was no collusion?
The Mueller report found that there were no that there were questions of facts and law that prevented him from finding that Donald Trump could be exonerated from obstruction of justice. And let's remember, when it came to Nixon and impeachment, there were 3 articles of impeachment. One was obstruction of justice, one was abuse of power, and one was contempt of Congress. And I think that we're going to learn more about where Trump may fall within those lines of the impeachment process.
And Keith, what are we to make of that? I mean, that Mueller is saying here that, you know, on the question of obstruction of justice, there can be no clear conclusion one way or the other, as if to say, well, maybe he did and maybe he didn't.
Well, I think we're to make of it just that. I mean, it's one of the reasons that people want to see the full report, because he did say there was evidence of obstruction of justice, but there was evidence on the other side of the question as well, and he found himself unable to make a decision about whether that should be prosecuted. And so the decision was made by the Attorney General, and we're already hearing Democrats say that means that decision is tainted, that he's biased, that he already had prejudged the possibility of whether the president, a sitting president, could be found guilty of obstruction of justice. So it really raises way more questions than it answers, and it certainly is going to be probably the main feature of attacks on what was released today, which is not to say that it's an attack on the report, because this document is not the report.
Right, and so, I mean, can we even begin to answer the question of what the net result is here, Keith? And just in the sense of, I mean, in the absence of any clear and damning or incriminating information, I mean, is Trump in a more or less precarious position than he had been?
Well, I think we have to be clear that in the great number of days ahead, where there are going to be all kinds of stories, they will look back on this as a good day. It was certainly a good day in terms of what the Attorney General's letter says. But remember also, even though there are all these other investigations, and even though there are still questions about what the details of the report might reveal, the headline that the president got today was golden, because in people's minds, those who are not paying close attention to this especially, they've heard over and over again about how Mueller was going to decide all of this for them, how Mueller was a straight arrow who would give them the truth. And all of that now is in Donald Trump's favor.
Kevin, I can see you wanting to jump in.
Well, no, I'm smiling because his legal jeopardy has barely changed. Because his legal jeopardy right now is all of the slimy business dealings that have been coming out of the Cohen investigation and out of the Southern District of New York. With respect to obstruction of justice, I think that what was made clear in the Barr summary today is that the Attorney General isn't prepared to seek obstruction of justice, but charges. But at this point, that's a political matter for the Congress. And I think ultimately one of the things that came out of this is a confirmation of Russian influence. His indictments have shown that there was at least a propensity, or let's say an openness, to cooperation because of sort of the useful dupe strategy that's been used by first the Soviets and the Russians over the years.
And I have to say, I agree. So my point about impeachment is simply that Donald Trump is not out of the woods and is not exonerated as he would claim that he is. And although he would like to have witch hunt posted on placards for use in his campaign for 2020, that it's not over for him. And I do agree with you that the one surefire way to ensure that Trump is removed from office and that we have a recovery of our democracy and the integrity of our institutions of democracy is for the voters to have their say in the 2020 elections and to ultimately oust him from office. And I think that's what you have, the 2020 contenders on the Democratic side. I think you have them both saying that they want to see the full report, that they want to see the underlying evidence for the report, right, but also in campaigning today in Georgia and in Texas and in Iowa, they are all and in New York, bringing the fight to Donald Trump's doorstep. They are also arguing for the best of America and for the issues that are affecting American families at their kitchen table and when they're going to work and when they're thinking about the future of their children.
And Keith, I just want to ask you a question on that front, on the question of immediate next steps and the Democrats' effort to make the full unfiltered version of Mueller's report, force that into the public domain. In terms of that fight, are they likely to win? I mean, do we know?
I think we're in for a long period of the Democrats in Congress trying to work out a way that they can get the information that Mueller has easily. But if they can't, they do have the power to get it on their own, to repeat some of the steps that Mueller took in his own investigation. And from what we've heard already this evening, they're determined to do that.
And Elena, what is it that they hope to find, given what we know about Mueller's conclusions? I guess on one front that there are no further indictments, at least from his end, planned, but also that there's no clear conclusion of collusion.
Well, I think in part they hope to establish a narrative. So for instance, Michael Cohen's testimony about the character of Donald Trump will be stuck in the collective memory of the American public, in the indelible memory of the American public forever. I think that what Congress is hoping to do is to allow the American public to understand who is at the helm here in terms of Donald Trump being in the Oval Office. I think that they're going to point to issues of corrupt business dealings leading up to the election, to campaign finance fraud, potentially to bank fraud, and of course hush money payments. All of those issues that may not have resulted, may not be pertain to the collusion with Russia, but show that he may have tried to tamper with witnesses who were furthering his business dealings.
And Andrew, I think one of the things we need to think of here is that collusion was always going to be a high bar. And frankly, I never thought that collusion was really going to be a practical or probable conclusion, because that would have required the idea that there was actually a strategy behind the Trump campaign. And there never was. I mean, Trump is an accidental president for a lot of reasons. And one of them, however, was not that he had this grandiose strategy that he knew was going to deliver him the White House. He didn't. And no more so than he has a grandiose strategy that shows how to run the White House now.
There's one last question that I'd like to ask, if I could, just to wrap this up. And Keith, maybe I'll put it to you. Recently, we saw the former FBI director, James Comey, publish an op-ed in the New York Times where he said he actually doesn't care what the outcome is, but he just wants two things. One, that Mueller be able to carry out his investigation without itself being obstructed, and two, that there be a restoration of confidence in American institutions. Is that what we're getting here?
Well, that would require the president not saying something like this was an illegal takedown that failed, which was his first reaction to the letter that was released today. So no, I don't think we're going to get that. I think the president sees opportunities in here to continue to exploit divisions, to continue to try to undermine institutions, democratic institutions, judicial institutions. And I think that's the style of politics that he's established, he's most comfortable with, and we have no reason to believe that he isn't going to continue with that, and that he's going to continue with it using whatever evidence he can now exploit from this to say, look, it was a witch hunt all along. The media lied to you. The Democrats lied to you. I'm the only one who tells you the truth. That's what we're going to hear.
Yeah, and I completely agree. Yeah,
that's where we'll wrap the conversation. Keith, Elena, Kevin, thanks so much.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you.
That was a great conversation. Next on The National, Go Public investigates problem-plagued car engines.
If it weren't for our neighbors, we'd likely be dead because it was only minutes from our gas barbecue.
What two car makers are doing about their engines that may catch fire spontaneously. That's next.
An Ontario man is going public tonight with the story of his car catching fire in the middle of the night when it wasn't even running. Ever since our Go Public team started looking into Hyundai and Kia engine issues in January, we've heard from several people across the country about sudden vehicle fires, and our investigation has now led to action. The car makers have stepped up efforts to fix the problems. But as Rosa Marcatelli reports, not everyone is satisfied.
Chris Dietrich and his family woke up a few weeks ago to a neighbor pounding on the door, telling them flames were shooting out of their garage and closing in on the house. The engine in the family's 2015 Hyundai Tucson had spontaneously burst into flames.
If it weren't for our neighbors, we'd likely be dead because it was only minutes from our gas barbecue.
They aren't the only ones with a horror story like that. More stories of failures and fires with some engines have emerged since Go Public first reported on concerns around Hyundai and Kia's recall process, delays and missed models. Joseph Mickelson's 2013 Kia Sorento caught fire during a road trip. The engine had already been recalled once, replaced, and then recalled again.
Yeah, I got away lucky because we weren't injured.
Hyundai has the second highest number of reported engine fires, 21 over the past 3 years, according to Transport Canada. The car maker confirms 5 due to engine failure. This consumer advocate credits GoPublic's investigation with pressuring Hyundai and Kia into action.
Since the original GoPublic report, we've had some very good news, a massive expansion.
In fact, the car makers have done more to deal with the engine issues in the last couple of weeks than they have since the recall started 4 years ago, doubling the number of vehicles under recall and extending warranties for others. Hyundai says it's doing it out of an abundance of caution.
Then there are the lawsuits, one in Canada and more in the U.S.
There are numerous problems with these vehicles that the companies themselves admit they're recalling, but they don't have a fix for, which is astounding when you say it out loud.
The recalls may come too late for owners who no longer have vehicles. They're now dealing with their own insurance companies to cover the loss.
My family's lives are going to be disrupted, and my insurance company tells me it's going to be disrupted probably for another 2 to 3 months.
The two car makers have now recalled almost 3 million vehicles with potential engine issues in Canada and the U.S. Hyundai Canada says fires in its vehicles are very rare and that it actively monitors and evaluates potential safety concerns and acts swiftly. Kia says a vehicle's engine failure or fire can occur due to any number of complex factors, and it shouldn't be speculated that any are from a common vehicle issue. Rosa Marcatelli, CBC News, Calgary.
And all of our Go Public stories come from you. So if you have a story that you want our team to look into, just send an email to gopublic@cbc.ca. Okay, just ahead. The puck drops on a historic broadcast.
I am completely in awe and I am completely proud. I'm very proud.
The moment coming up.
Here are some stories we're watching this week on The National. A coroner's inquest is set to begin tomorrow into the death of a Radiohead drum tech killed in a stage collapse 7 years ago. It happened at Toronto's Downsview Park before the band was set to perform. Charges were laid against the promoter, engineer, and contractor, but were stayed in 2017 because they took too long to come to trial.
All right, we see you guys going. You're looking good.
On Friday, history is expected to be made in outer space. American astronauts Anne McClain and Christina Cook are scheduled to perform the first ever all-female spacewalk at the International Space Station. And tomorrow, thousands of Ontarians will get their final checks as part of the province's Basic Income Pilot Project. It was an experiment to try to replace other social support systems, but it's being ended early. As Jacqueline Hansen shows us, what the new progressive conservative government has deemed a failure, some say was a lifeline.
All remain? Better? No olive?
Louis Segura and his wife opened this restaurant 3 years ago.
People think like, oh, well, you have a business, you're making money. And that's not the case.
Like many entrepreneurs, their dreams were fueled largely by debt.
It's scary, right? We sold our home. We started renting. We had our 4th child, and we were trying to figure out how to juggle it all.
In this town, poverty isn't always visible, but it is here. 20,000 people live in Lindsay, and about half make less than $30,000 a year. In 2017, the Ontario government chose Lindsay, along with Hamilton and Thunder Bay, as testing grounds for its basic income pilot project.
We want to find out whether a basic income makes a positive difference in people's lives.
A single person was guaranteed a minimum income of nearly $17,000, a couple $24,000. People with a disability received an additional $6,000 per year. If a person worked, the government deducted 50 cents for every dollar earned.
Hi, come up to the 4th floor, please.
Okay, thanks, Tina. Dana Bowman signed up. She has relied on government support most of her life, like the Ontario Disability Support Program.
I wasn't wanting to say anything to anybody of where my income was coming from. It felt like an embarrassment to me.
As part of the basic income pilot, her monthly income more than doubled to nearly $2,000. She did some small upgrades around her home.
Pillows, blankets, comforters. I'd been secondhand for years.
And hoped to get an education.
I just wanted some self-worth again.
Right on or on this side?
Segura's family made a small income, but they still qualified for about $800 a month.
Growing up, when my parents were just like, never, go on welfare, never do this, never do, because it's just seen as bad, and like you just work hard, you did it. And yeah, of course, you work hard, but there's times that you may need the assistance.
The help was expected to last 3 years, but less than a year in, a new provincial government took power and announced it would cancel the program and instead promised to reform social assistance province-wide.
We're hitting the pause button on a patchwork of programs that were not doing what they were intended to do, which is supporting Ontario's most vulnerable.
Ontario wasn't the only place testing an alternative system. Finland's smaller, more limited basic income trial wrapped up in January.
I think the biggest effect was psychological.
The result, people were happier, but it didn't inspire them to work more. Still, the data gives researchers something to work with.
Here's the basic income application form.
Mike Perry is an advocate for basic income. He fought to bring the pilot to Lindsay. Now he wants to fight the government for canceling it.
It doesn't really matter anymore kind of where you stand on the idea of a basic income as a social policy. Everyone I've talked to across the spectrum agrees you don't just stop your commitment midstream. You don't just throw people under the financial bus. It talks about a 3-year program right on page 4.
Perry says people signed up expecting it would last a full 3 years.
So I had to borrow the judicial robes from a friend of mine here.
He's dusting off his old law degree in hopes of putting together a class action lawsuit.
People were supposed to make changes to their lives with this increased income. I get emails literally every day about people who've made commitments, who are caught out, who moved to a better apartment, one with windows, believe it or not. Better for mental health.
There are some stories of success that will hopefully last. Segura's restaurant has finally made a profit.
I think even like with, with basic income this year, we probably wouldn't have been eligible anymore. Which is, again, I think is like a success story in itself. Like that's the whole purpose.
Yeah, I'm hoarding. It's officially hoarding.
But for Bowman, school is no longer an option, and she's on the hook for payments on a new couch until October.
Didn't go and pay for the love seat I'm sitting on now in one shot because it was budgeting.
Money for her will be even tighter than before the pilot. One of thousands forced to pick up the financial and emotional pieces left behind by a program that not only injected money into communities, but also hope. Jacqueline Hansen, CBC News, Lindsay, Ontario.
Still ahead on The National, a historic first hockey broadcast is our moment. But first, in case you missed it, Iceland has long been famous for its otherworldly natural beauty and effectively unpronounceable landmarks, at least for most of us in Canada, often used as locations for movies and TV shows like Game of Thrones. Last year alone, the tiny nation hosted 2 million visitors keen to see things like these lava fields, this archipelago, and this national park. But one of the country's most breathtaking sites is now off limits because it's too popular. A remote canyon in southern Iceland called, well, when in doubt, let's phone a friend. So that canyon has been so overwhelmed that authorities are locking it down until at least June to protect fragile vegetation from damaging foot traffic. All of this is blamed in part on one of Canada's greatest exports. No matter what they say. The video for Justin Bieber's hit 2015 song, I'll Show You, was filmed on location at and hundreds of thousands of people have flocked there ever since. Now, Icelandic tourism officials don't blame the Biebs per se. It's not like the song implores people to go stomping around. They just want to keep tourists away until it recovers. And if you're waiting for the requisite song title pun, never say never.
Bet you've never watched an NHL game quite like this. In fact, I can pretty much guarantee it because this is the very first ever televised NHL game being called in the Plains Cree language. It aired tonight on the Aboriginal People's Television Network with host Earl Wood, former NHL player John Chabot giving commentary and analysis, and Clarence Iron doing the play-by-play. It's historic. It's also important, say Cree speakers, for the next generation. And tonight, it is our moment.
All right, well, back to it. Video of the Bagwansa.
Well, this is the year of Indigenous languages, and I'm really happy that our languages are being showcased and promoted.
I guess it's about time. Past few decades, I guess, so like we kind of lost touch with our language. It'll mean a really big thing for our youth.
I'm really happy that we can celebrate our language, even in top-level sports.
I hope it's not just a one-time thing.
Really something. So here's the thing. Clarence Iron, he's no rookie, right? He's been in broadcast for decades. He works at a local radio station in northern Saskatchewan. He's even called some Indigenous hockey tournaments, but of course the NHL, it's a whole other kettle of fish. And funny thing, in preparing, he said, speaking Cree, that's the easy part. The hard part is remembering all the players, their names, their numbers, that sort of thing.
Absolutely, but he was terrific, and I had read that he was concerned about the pace of the NHL game, that it would be so much faster than other games that he's called, but we heard those excerpts. He sounded really good, and it was a fantastic game. I may have been watching it while we were doing the first edition of our show, and so what an opportunity to showcase the language, because you don't even have to be a hockey fan to have sat and been engrossed in the game. So a win for the language, a win for the broadcast crew, and a shout out for Sportsnet and the Aboriginal People's Network. They both did a great job. That is the National for this Sunday, March 24th. Good night.
Good night.